Thank you, Doug. I was, at first I thought I was going to do a message on Memorial Day, and I think something told me I wasn't. So I based my message on John 5, 1 through 9, and I'll read that for you now. The healing at the pool. After this, Jesus went to Jerusalem for a religious festival. Near the sheep gate in Jerusalem, there is a pool with 5 porches. In Hebrew, it is called Bethzatha. A large crowd of sick people were lying on the porches, the blind, the lame, and the paralyzed. A man was there who had been sick for 38 years. Jesus saw him lying there, and he knew that the man had been sick for such a long time. So he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" The sick man answered, "Sir, I don't have anyone here to put me in the pool where the water is stirred up. While I am trying to get in, somebody else gets there first." Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat, and walk." Immediately the man got well. He picked up his mat and started walking. The day this happened was the Sabbath. My title this morning is Get Up and Get Going. As most people know, people learn as much by questions we ask as by the information we impart. And so, in the sermon this morning, I'd like to take a closer look at one of the most poignant questions Jesus asked. Do you want to be made well? I think you'll find that even though it was asked of a man who was paralyzed from birth, it speaks to us as well, because to be made well is to be made whole. And to be made whole is to experience the gift of life in all its abundance. The story is set in the city of Jerusalem. John says, after these things, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In Jesus' day, the Jewish calendar contained 3 high and holy days: Passover, Pentecost, and Tabernacles. If you were a devout Jew living within 16 miles of Jerusalem, you were expected to attend them all. If you lived away from Jerusalem, you were expected to attend at least one each year. Jesus was a devout Jew, and like other devout Jews, he made pilgrimages to the holy city as often as possible to observe the feast days. John says when Jesus got to Jerusalem, he entered the city by a sheep gate and went to the pool at Bethzatha nearby. The sheep gate still stands today. It was called the sheep gate because shepherds would drive their sheep into Jerusalem through the gate and on over to the pool of Bethzatha to the right, where they would be washed before taking to the temple for a sacrifice. The pool of Bethzatha was separated by a dividing wall in the middle, creating 2 bodies of water. The sheep were washed at one end of the pool and the people bathed at the other. I'm not real sure it was sanitary. Around the sides of the pool, where people bathed, there were 5 porticos, and under the porticos, people with various infirmities gathered in hopes of being healed. According to John, in these porticos lay a great multitude of those who were sick, blind, lame, or paralyzed. Now, the pool of Bethzatha was fed by an underground spring, and there was a belief that this pool of water had healing powers and that it could change one's life. It is said that every now and then an angel would stir the water. The water would begin to bubble, and the first one in the water would be healed. According to John, Jesus met a man who had been coming to the pool of Bethzatha for 38 years in hopes of being healed. But because he was paralyzed, he had no means of getting into the water on his own. much less getting there first. And so Jesus asked, "Do you want to be made well?" Now at first, Jesus' question seems like such an odd thing to ask. Do you want to be made well? What kind of question is that? Why, of course, he wanted to be made well. He'd been coming to the pool all his life. Why else would he have been there? 38 years is a long time to sit by the water and wait. Every day is the same. Waiting, watching, hoping. Not much changes. Sitting on his mat has become a way of life for the man in today's gospel. His life is stagnant. He's unable to see, as my mother would say, any farther than his nose. He's convinced that life will bubble up inside of him over there in that magic pool of water. Given this circumstances, he had no reasonable chance of ever being made well. So in this sense, it was a good question. Do you really want to be made well? Because if you do, you're going about it the wrong way. Unless something gives, it's not going to happen. So he sits on his mat waiting, watching, and hoping things will change. The man in today's gospel won't get up off his mat until he sees the first bubble. He is living in as soon as life. As soon as the water bubbles, then I will get up off my mat. As soon as I get to the water, my life will be better. As soon as I get into the water, my problems will be fixed. The pool at Bethzatha is an illusion. It convinces us that our life is nothing more than our circumstances. It deceives us into believing that life is to be found outside ourselves. It tricks us into living in as soon as life. Most of us know what that is like. We say to ourselves, or maybe even out loud to others, as soon as this or that happens, everything will be better. I'll be happy. My problems will go away. I'll be satisfied. All will be well. The pool at Bethzatha has a strong attraction for us. Children often say, as soon as I get big, or as soon as I get to be an adult, it continues throughout our lives. Now think about this. As soon as I graduate, as soon as I get a job, as soon as I get a better job, as soon as I get married or get out of this relationship, as soon as I have more time, more money, or a better house, as soon as he changes the way he acts, or she changes the way she acts, as soon as she apologizes, as soon as I feel better or get through this time in my life, as soon as they do what I want, as soon as I get a vacation, or as soon as I retire, or move to the mountains, or move to Atlanta. As soon as I get over this grief, I no longer feel sad. Here's my favorite. As soon as I lose 10 pounds and get in shape. Yeah. As soon as. You can fill in the blanks with most anything. The problem is there will always be another pool of Bethzatha. Meanwhile, life has to be put on hold. The pause button has been pushed. Here we are, sitting on our mats, self-imprisoned by the circumstances of our lives. The imprisonment is so great that when Jesus asked the man, "Do you want to be made well?" the man doesn't even say yes. Instead, he offers circumstances and excuses. I have no one to put me in the water. When the water bubbles, others get there first. They take cups. I'm not suggesting that the circumstances of our lives are irrelevant or have no effect. That's just not true. They do affect us. We are, however, more than the circumstances of our life. Life is not to be found outside our various situations or circumstances, but within them. To believe something other than this is to live constantly looking for the next pool of Bethzatha. Jesus does not help the man get into the water. He comes to him on his mat, the same mat and situation the man so wants to escape, and speaks words of life and resurrection. Get up off your mat. To quote Jesus a bit more accurately, stand up, take your mat, and walk. The man does not leave his mat behind. It goes with him. His circumstances are real. The difference is now he carries the mat. The mat no longer carries him. I suggest that our circumstances are the same. We have to carry our circumstances and deal with them. They don't have to make us different than what we are. Jesus doesn't change our outward circumstances. He changes us. He calls us into a new way of being, or seeing, or acting, or speaking, or thinking. When we stand and rise to that new life, we discover that things have somehow changed. That doesn't necessarily make life easy or mean we no longer have to deal with the way life is, with the way our life is. It makes our circumstances more manageable, and we engage them from a different place in a different position. The pool of Bethesda is drained of its power over us. There is freedom where there once was imprisonment. Inertia gives way to creativity. Our stagnant waters now bubble with new life. Jesus asks us today, do you want to be made well? Do you want to experience life in all its abundance? Then maybe we need to try a new approach. If you're a person that blurts out what they think at the first drop of a hat, sort of like me, you might need to try holding back. Let someone else do the talking. On the other hand, if you're a person who never says a word, then you might want to speak out more. Let your voice be heard. The point is, dare to do something different. Dare to alter your routine. Change your diet. Cultivate new friendships. Break old habits. Learn new techniques of relating to others more effectively. This can be an important first step toward experiencing a new and more abundant life. And then, venture out of your comfort zone. The story is told of a man who had an offensive body odor. He went to the doctor to see if something could be done about this. The doctor examined him and couldn't find anything physically wrong. He scratched his head and said, "What do you do for a living?" The man sighed and said, "Well, that may be the problem. You see, I work at an airport, and it's my job to empty the holding tanks from the restrooms aboard the aircraft. It's all overhead, you know, and invariably some of the spillage ends up getting on me. Try as I may, it's hard to get it all off." Said the doctor. "Sounds like you need to get a new job." The man looked at the doctor and said, "What? And give up aviation?" I know that story is a bit silly, but it illustrates how often we get locked into the mindset that where we are and what we're doing is a given, while in fact there are other options. And God often calls us to venture out into new frontiers of life and faith. Take a moment and ask yourself, where am I today in my life, in my work, in my relationship to others? Is this where God wants me to be? The life Jesus offers does not happen as soon as. It happens in this place, at this time, in these circumstances. Are you sitting on your mat? Are you looking for a pool at Bethesda? Don't bother. Stand up. Take your mat and walk. Amen.
Amen. Good job.
If you will rise and help me sing hymn number 677, Let There Be Peace on Earth. Let remember all those who have come before us and given the greatest gift of our democratic nation, their lives. Their duty, their honor, and their lives are precious gifts that must be given to the future of our country and our families. Amen. Please join us downstairs.
Right.